Okay, good afternoon, class. Our lesson for this day is lesson 6 and 7 tayo, no? Profile and sports writing. So what is our objective for today? That is to do a close reading of creative non-fictional text. That is a profile and sports writing. Of course, you're going to write an example also of a profile and a sports writing. So let's watch again a short video about the perfect profile.
Hello and welcome to the Perfect Profile with Journalism MO2, Digital Media Reporting and Writing. I'm at Moore Park College and this is Professor Kelsey Stewart. How to write a compelling profile. The focus of profiles should be news angles or aspects of the subject's personal or professional life, explanations for why the subject is newsworthy, relevant, and interesting. They should be based on interviews with the actual subject, as well as following up with 3 to 5 different sources that back up the subject's story. You're going to include major elements of hard news stories, but also provide readers with details that capture the essence of the subject being profiled. A profile is a type of feature story, and it usually focuses on a person and what's important or interesting about that person at that moment. For example, the journalist Gay Talese did a famous profile on Frank Sinatra called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold and spoke to the singer's entourage since Sinatra would not grant an interview. Although profiles usually focus on people like celebrities, journalists also profile entities like sports teams and companies. It's also not necessary for subjects of profiles to be public figures. They can be anyone who might make an interesting story that readers can relate to. Profiles are popular in magazines, but you will also see profiles in newspapers and other publications. The first interview is the most important, and it will always be followed by a second and third for clarification. Make sure you have done your research on your subject first. You want to draft out questions that linger. Find a part of their lives that have not been addressed yet if they've been interviewed before, and make it special. Remember, at that moment is your focus. Focus on the story. Take the grit and make it shine. Avoid and thens and remove total focus on the quotes. Feature stories, such as individual profiles, are much different than hard news stories. Part of your job is to weave a narrative for the readers. When interviewing subjects, focus on getting the details of the story accurate and don't worry so much about taking down everything they say verbatim. Certainly, if someone says something worth quoting, that must be accurate, but an abundance of quotes is not what drives a good narrative. Show, don't tell is a prime line for journalists, but for a feature or profile story, this is huge. Rather than a chronological reaccount of their lives, show it through advanced writing techniques and drop a reader into the scene. Most writers remember this from their creative writing classes, and it's especially valuable when writing feature stories. Set a scene for the readers and build tension. Make them feel as if they are right there in the story alongside your subject. Why do we care? You must clearly define why this story, why this subject you're interviewing is newsworthy. Perhaps the individual being profiled did something or experienced something uncommon. Perhaps the subject had an experience or is involved in something that serves as a point of broader news. Make sure that you draft it out. Highlight the most interesting and important points and go from there. Once you're ready to write, you review your notes and mark down the most interesting points and quotes that you would like to use to shape your story about this person. Consider what was the most surprising and build your story structure around the peaks and the compelling parts of the conversation. Make it count. Readers will decide in the first paragraph whether it's worth reading or not. You want to spend extra time at the beginning of your story. Readers will decide whether to keep reading based on your lead and how much you have piqued their interest. You want to prioritize verbs over adjectives because verbs give a sense of action, of something's happening, rather than a descriptive start to a novel on a dark and stormy night. You want to make sure that you grab your readers immediately. Don't describe someone as bitter or an office as sterile. Instead, describe the details you observed and let the reader envision that person's actions or the characteristics of that office themselves. One of the best stories was a student of mine did on a mural artist. And rather than just writing about the fact that she paints, he went and observed her painting and covered that entire scene within his profile. Quotes are incredibly important, but you don't want to overload with them. But you also don't want to talk too much. You need to find a balance. You need to pull out your favorite novel and find the best scene with heavy dialogue. Imagine what your story needs. Make sure you complete the story too. Don't leave giant gaps that keeps the readers confused. You have to be strategic with your quotations. Like, it can be hard to capture a mood with direct quotes only, so use your own prose and then interject relevant quotes to enhance your point. Be sure to always provide attribution for the quotes that you do use, as the reader shouldn't have to ever wonder who is talking. You need to also watch for gaps though. Are there gaping holes in your story or questions that you do not have answered? Another journalist should read your story and tell you if they are left with more questions than answers at the end of it. Your conclusion is often one of the most important parts of a profile. It wraps it up, but it also gives a reader a sense of completion in reading it. They're not reading hard news, they're reading a story about a special individual. So it's up to you how you want to end it, but make sure to check out a favorite profile article of your own and see what techniques they used. This is one from Vogue. It was a profile on Reese Witherspoon, and the last part of the story was a quote from Reese saying, "I didn't think a moment like this was going to happen," she says, cradling Pepper, the French bulldog, in her arms. "We're not there yet, but I lay down and dream of all this stuff I laid down and dreamed of all this stuff 7 or 8 years ago, and now it's finally starting to happen. I guess what I do now is start thinking of some more dreams." That was the last quote. That is the very end of the story or the profile on Reese Witherspoon, and it tied it up pretty nicely. Thank you for tuning in, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, so about the short video that we have watched, we have listened to it. So na-explain dito kung ano yung mga pamamaraan, how are we going to write a profile story. Now we're going to explain what is a profile. Oh, so let's start with the introduction. So the profile, it is a biography sketch, no? It is not just a biography or autobiography. It is a biography sketch from the term sketch, no? Binibigay isa-isa yung details. It provides the details of the person's character. It is an overview of the person's life story and the highlights of the person's achievements and accomplishments. So, yung pagkakaiba ng profile sa biography or autobiography. Sige nga, reviewin ko nga tayo guys, kung naaalala pa natin mga anak. What have you remembered about biography? Ano ba yung biography? Anyone from the class? Charlene?
Ma'am, ito po yung personal account ng isang tao o like, kunyari sa sarili ko po, ganun.
Okay. Thank you. How about autobiography? Ira May, what have you remembered about autobiography?
Ano po, about po siya sa person's life. About po siya sa personal na life po, ganun.
Okay. Sige, thank you. So, explain lang nating mabuti ha. Baka na-confuse kayo. Pag sinabi nating biography, from the term bio, life, it is a written works, no? Na isinulat natin yung buhay ng isang famous na tao. Tayo yung writer, tas ibang tao yung isinulat mo sa biography. While pag sinabi nating ang autobiography, it could mean na ikaw mismo, yung author, at yung mismong sariling buhay mo ang nandoon sa autobiography. So ngayon, ano yung pagkakaiba nito sa profile o biography sketch? Sa profile, Sabi nga, highlight lang ang kukunin natin. It's just about the important details ng person's character and ano-ano ba yung kanyang achievements and accomplishments, and also an overview lang, hindi kabuuan, just an overview dun sa person's life story. Okay? So when the writer crafts a profile, the writer makes some person the focus of the story. The writer can profile a stranger, okay? Or someone he or she knows well. So pwede itong hindi sikat na tao. Pwedeng kaibigan mo, kakilala mo, pinsan mo, mother mo, father mo, na sa tingin mo, they have something na dapat a story to tell. The writer can also profile someone ordinary, okay? Such as a teacher, a priest, a police officer, or someone extraordinary like Margaret Atwood, David Hockney, or Steve Jobs. For instance, in the November 11, 2011 edition of the New Yorker magazine, writer Malcolm Gladwell wrote a profile on Steve Jobs called The Tweaker, The Real Genius of Steve Jobs. So yun yung title pa lang ng profile, no? About Tweaker. Okay? The writer must answer the question before writing a profile to. Ano yung question na dapat na masagot ng writer? First, who is this person? If the writer knows the person, the writer will rely on memory and observation and personal experience to write the profile. For instance, Charles Simic wrote a profile about his uncle called Dinner at Uncle Boris, which is based on a story where they have a dinner at his uncle's home. If the writer doesn't know the person, so the writer will conduct a research, interviewing the person, visiting various places where the person works, lives, socializes, observing the person in their daily life, reading books, articles, and other material on the person. A good profile also includes telling details, showing dialogue, and storytelling. The writer will also use scene. Yan, lagi tayo niya sabi dapat meron tayong mga eksena, no? Summary, and the personal reflection. A good profile is also interesting where profile someone new encourages the reader to think more about the person. So ang isang good profile, it informs, it educates, it entertains readers, and some profiles also have a serious tone and others, they have a humorous tone. So nakakatawa, nakakatuwa, and minsan naman seryoso yung tono ng ating profile. In our lesson, so i-discuss pa natin paano nga ba maisa-isa yung paggawa ng biography sketch, and this will cover the definition of a profile, what are the types of profiles, we have to gather the material to write a profile, we have to write the profile, and additional resources to learn more about writing a profile. Pakibasa nga anak, will you please read the meaning of what is a profile? Ira May? Hello,
What
Ira.
is a profile?
Are you still there?
Yes, po. What is a profile? A profile is a written portrait of a person. Often a profile is published as a narrative nonfiction article in a newspaper, magazine, or website. The story is based on facts discovered through research as well as interviews with the subject and their friends, family, or professional associations. A profile piece is meant to be informative. It is a portrait of the person through a combination of a story, quotes, and photographs. Nang nakamute po kayo.
I'm sorry. Bakit ba ang hina ng internet? So, papansin natin sa ating profile, pag sinabi nating profile, napapublish siya as a narrative non-fiction article saan? Sa mga newspaper, sa magazine, at sa website. At ang profile ay written portrait of a person, no? Andoon mas makikilala mo yung isang tao sa pamamagitan ng isang profile. And the story is based, syempre, saan? Sa katotohanan, sa facts, na na-discover through research, of course, interviews with the subject, and you can also get the first-hand information from their friends, their family, no, or professional associates, no. Ang isang profile piece ay dapat informative, no? It can also a combination of stories, quotes, and photographs. Ayan. So, kaya nga profile. Mahalaga na may picture nung tao na ginawa natin ng story dun sa profile. Next, definition of a profile, no? It is a book-length biography, pero in-depth ang description niya, no? About the life and times of another person. Nor is the profile as a book-length autobiography which involves writing about one's life. So, pag sinabi natin na profile, hindi siya masyadong mahaba kagaya ng autobiography. Pero siya ay in-depth description. The profile is usually only a few pages. Ayan, few pages. So, article siya na part ng magazine, ng newspaper, or ng essay. The writer can profile someone he has or she has known. So, yan, sinabi na natin kanina to, na-explain na natin. So, sometimes the profile is about the good guy. So, pwedeng isang tao na may ginawang mabuti sa kanyang kapwa, no? Extraordinary or a heroine. The writer profiles a person who wants to achieve or accomplish something worthy. Perhaps the amateur athlete that dreams about winning a gold medal of the Olympics, pwede yun. A starving artist who desires to achieve fame and fortune, or about a writer that aspires to write a book, who wants to be the next best seller. Some profiles are also about the villain. In the September 24, 2012 edition of the New Yorker Malcolm Gladwell, he writes a profile about child molester, a child molester called In Plain View, How Child Molesters Get Away with It. In the essay, Gladwell narrates two stories about pedophiles to illustrate how the sexual predator uses trust to create the opportunity to abuse a child. So, nailagay din dito sa profile na to yung ginawang masama ng isang child molester. So the writer will include the details about the person's private life, psyche, and public world, and the inner world details with the person's thoughts, feelings, opinions, view of other people. In writing about the outer world, the writer identifies also some of the important setbacks and obstacles as well as the significant accomplishments and achievement. So we're going to say that it is a good profile. A good profile of a public person also includes answering the several questions. First, why is the writer profiling the person? What is the unique quality or attitude, character about this person? What is significant about the person? So ano yung mahalagang nagawa nitong tao na to? Bakit siya kailangan ilagay sa good profile, no? What are the person's achievements or accomplishments? What obstacles or setbacks did the persons have to overcome? Why is the person in the news or public consciousness? Or does the writer likes the person? Medyo ano tayo dun objective. Dislikes the person or why? No? The writer can also profile someone he or she knows or a stranger nga, sinabi natin to kanina. It can create the profile from memories, from observations, and a personal experience. So, kailangan lang lagi natin na kapag magsusulat tayo ng profile ng isang tao, hanggat maaari, kilala natin siya as in kilala personally. Kasi 'di ba pwede ngang interviewin mo yung tao na 'to, then magkuha ka ng gather information through the family, through the friends, through the coworkers, associates, yan. So yun yung mga pwede nating kuhanan ng information. So the best profile answered the question, who is this person? Unfortunately, people perform many roles, such as a husband, a breadwinner, a parent, and so the writer will not be able to write a complete profile. But no matter how much research the writer completes, the writer will never know the person completely because people have dark sides and they don't share these personality or these traits that aren't always revealed. What are the types of profiles? In telling the true stories, writer Jackie Banaszynski in his essay Profile identifies the three types of profiles. Una ay cradle to current. It is a cradle to current profile where it is about the person's entire life up to the present. The writer invests a great deal of time in researching, in writing, and in fact checking. Okay? Una, cradle to current profile. Pangalawa, a paragraph profile. So mukhang ito yung kaya natin gawin, a paragraph profile. This type of profile is just brief and providing the essential details about the accomplishment or achievements and the person's significance to the story. It is a paragraph or two and a part of a larger story. So, kung ano lang yung highlights na gusto mong kunin na part dun sa mas malaking story, ginawa mo lang siya ng short profile, no? A paragraph profile. Third, niche profile. It is a profile that is 1,000 words or less and can be written in a short period of time where the writer composes a profile about someone in the news, no? This type of profile includes also the relevant background information. For instance, if the writer is crafting a profile about a person who won a Pulitzer for literature, so obviously, the writer would include education and previously the published works. But biography details about place of birth and early education would not be relevant. So instead, the writer will just focuses on telling the right details. Yan, gathering the material for the profile. First, begin by searching the internet. So kung yung taong ito ay sikat, kilala, na igagawa mo ng profile, pwede kang makahanap ng mga information sa pagsisearch sa internet. Pangalawa, ito, kung kakilala mo talaga to, sabi ko nga, interview the person you are profiling and other people who know the person. Pwede mong interviewin yung friends niya, yung family niya, and interview subject matter experts na yan. For instance, to get related information about being a stunt pilot, writer Annie Dillard collected quotes from a pilot who has a crop duster. In the interview, what sorts of questions should you ask? Here are a few suggestions. Ano yung dapat tanungin pag mag-i-interview tayo? What are the events or moments that shape your life? What are your biggest accomplishments and achievements? What are your fears or what are you afraid of? What is your biggest regret? What setbacks or obstacles have you faced? What motivates you? What are your fears and your worries? And what do you value? Question? Guys, may tanong ba tayo mga anak?
Wala po.
Okay, sige. Tuloy lang ako ha. Malapit na. Sunod na tayo sa sports writing after nito. Here are the few tips for writing a profile. Pakitandaan na natin to mga steps or few tips. Una, select a person to profile. Then begin with an interesting question you want to answer. Tandaan, number 1. Select a person to profile, then begin with an interesting question that you want to answer. So if this person that you're going to profile is someone you knew, you can get information from your memory. You can observe the person in real life. You can write about some significant event. Example nga, yung kanina sinabi natin, sa Dillard's profile, she answers what it is like to be a stunt pilot, no? If the person is unknown, you have to collect your material by researching the person. So, syempre, pag gagawa tayong profile, mas mahalaga, mas importante kung kaya natin yung nang kilala natin para madali nating ma-interview kahit through yun lang, through phone call, through messenger, through Google Meet, yan, pwede tayo mag-interview. Yung maire-record pa natin yung mga sagot. Writing a profile number 2. Before interviewing, of course, we have to prepare list of open-ended questions that you want to ask. This required the person being interviewed to respond with more than just yes or no. Yun yung pangalawa. Pangatlo, after doing the research, we have to decide on an approach. Ano ba yung approach, yung atake na gagawin natin sa pagsusulat ng profile? How are you going to begin? Is it with the scene or with the quotation or with the question? Before writing, outline your story, making a list of all the important points you want to write about. Okay? Pang-apat, fourth, always focus on what is significant or compelling. So ano na yung mga significant event na gusto mong ilagay sa profile? What is surprising? So yan, may mga twists. What is important? Excuse? Are there any secrets, oddities, peculiarities, or contributions to society? What is their legacy? Ayan. So ano yung gustong maiwan ng tao na to? Tatak niya, pagkakakilanlan. Meron bang kakaiba sa kanyang ginawa? So meron ba siyang kamangha-mangha na contribution, no? Na pwede mong ilagay dun sa profile. Show and tell your reader. You tell the reader by explaining and summarizing. You show the reader by writing the scenes, and for any significant event, write a scene. Sa kagaya nung in-explain kanina dun sa short video na napanood natin, mas mahalaga na when you write the scene, also make the reader be part of the scene. Yung bang pakiramdam nila, they were part of the scene, of the story. Next, number 6, include dialogue. A good profile includes dialogue that revealing some personality trait. Number 7, include telling details. So, mahalaga na malagay natin yung important details. And what are these important details? It includes the vivid description revealing some personality trait. Okay, that's important. Number 8, don't create a one-dimensional portraits or profiles. Every person has a dark side. So every person has attributes you don't admire. So share these telling details with the reader. So kung pwede, dun sa profile, wag lang tayong one-dimensional. So yung lahat ng pwede nating ipakitang facets of life niya. Lagay natin. Number 9, your subject is living an epic. Ayan, epic. In other words, the profile fits into a larger story about life. So consider the larger story as you write. So yung sinulat natin, it's just part of a larger story. So mayroon pa ring story behind the profile that you write. No? Number 10, every story has a theme. Ayan. It has a universal truth. It is shared meaning. For instance, Steve Jobs was one of the great inventors and innovators. He was a visionary who reshaped the communication and he use of leisure time and everyday life with digital technologies. So yun yung number 10 natin, no? May question ba tayo, mga anak? Sa writing a profile, are you sure? Continue na tayo sa sports writing, okay lang?
Yes po.
Okay, sige. So sports writing, it is a form of journalism or creative nonfiction in which it is a sporting event about individual athlete or sports-related issue serves as the dominant subject. And a journalist who reports on sports ay tinatawag nating sports writer as in buo, magkasama yung sports na word at writer, or pwede yung hiwalay, two word, sports and then writer. In his foreword to the Best American Sports Writing 2015, series editor Glenn Stout says that a really good sports story provides an experience that approaches the book experience. It takes you from one place you've never been before and by the end, leaves you in another place. Change, okay? Ayun yung example natin. Example and observation about sports. The sports stories are based not on interview, but about on conversations. Conversations with people who are sometimes reluctant, sometimes in the ordinariest mood, or often not the most glib or polished conversationalists. By Michael Wilbon, Introduction to the Best American Sports Writing in 2012. So yun yung nabanggit niya sa paggumawa tayo ng sports writing. After this one, I will also discuss writing about sports story in Filipino. No? May mga ano tayo doon, explanation pa. Bukod sa English na to. W.C. Hines on a Bobby Davis, sabi niya, it's funny things about people. People will hate a guy all his life for what he is. But the minute he dies for it, they make him out a hero. And they go around saying that maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all because he sure was willing to go to the distance for whatever he believed or whatever he has. That's the way it was with Bami Davis. The night Bami fought Fritz Zivik in the garden and Zivik started giving him the business and Bami hit Zivik low maybe 30 times and kicked the referee. They wanted to hang him for it. That night, those four guys came in this bar and tried the same thing, only with rods. Bami went nuts again. He flattened the first one and then they shot him. And when everybody read about it and how Bami fought guns with only his left hook and died lying in the rain in front of the place, they all said he was really something and you sure had to give him credit at that. So it's a story na kung saan may nangyaring ganong incident. Gary Smith on Muhammad Ali. Do you know who's Muhammad Ali? So sikat to no na boxer. Around Muhammad Ali, all was decay. Mildewed tongues of insultation poked through gaps in the ceiling. Flaking cankers packed the painted walls. On the floor lay rotting scraps of carpet. He was cloaked in black. Black street shoes, black socks, black pants, black short sleeve shirt. He threw a punch, and in the small town's abandoned boxing gym, the rusting chain between the heavy bag and the ceiling rocked and creaked. Slowly at first, his feet began to dance around the bag. His left hand flicked a pair of jabs and then a right across and a left hook too. Recalled the ritual of butterfly and bee. The dance quickened. Black sunglasses flew from his pocket as he gathered speed. Black shirt tail flapped free. Black heavy bag rocked and creaked. Black street shoes scuffed faster and faster across the black moldering tiles. Yeah, load, chomp can still float. Chomp can still sting. He whirled, job, fainted, let his feet fly into a shuffle. How's that for a sick man? He shouted. So, ang nagsulat nito ay si Gary Smith. Ang title nito ay Ali and His Entourage. Sports Illustrated at April 25, 1988. So, yun yung part natin ng sports writing. How we're going to write research and sports writing. Athletes will tell you that games are won or lost in practice. Sports writer will tell you the same thing about stories. The key work is doing research before a game. The reporter tries to find out all she can about the teams, the coaches, and the issues he'll be covering. Sports writer Steve Sipple comments that background is the one time I don't have to worry about asking the right questions. It's the one time when I'm able to relax and have fun while I familiarize myself with an athlete or issue. A sports enthusiast's love for the game can include everything from the preparation and anticipation to watching the actual game, enjoying replays and highlights, and discussing everything about the game afterward, including the teams, the coaches, and their favorite players. Sports writing also plays a huge role in stirring up the expectations and giving fans the information they crave about the people behind their favorite sport. So guys, ano yung favorite nyong sports na pinapanood? Is it basketball, baseball, football?
Volleyball.
Ira May,
Volleyball.
volleyball. Charlene,
Volleyball po.
volleyball din. Francis,
Badminton po.
badminton. Okay. So ngayon, tuloy natin to. So ano-ano nga ba yung content pa ng isang sports writing in journalism, no? By Glenn Stout, who is the editor of the Best American Sports Writing in 2015, he describes a good sports story daw as one that provides an experience. So pakiramdam ng writer, they were also part of the game. It takes you from one place you've never been before, and by the end, it leaves you in another place. Change. In the introduction to the 2012 edition of the Best American Sports Writing, Michael Wilbon says, ayan, tandaan natin that the best sports stories are those that come from the conversations and not just from the formal interviews. These people may be reluctant or poor conversationalists, but they will often turn out the best stories. What are the elements of writing sports or sports writing? So, ito yon, highlights of the game, dapat meron nun. What are the names of the teams involved? Kung basketball yan or volleyball, sino-sino yung team? Anong name ng mga team members? Ano yung type ng sport? What are their score or the final outcome? When and where did the game was played? So meron tayo dito yung explanation about the inverted pyramid news writing. So sa taas, information they must have to know what happened. So binubuo ito ng critical information that must go at the beginning and they could stop reading at any time. Ano-ano yung mahalagang information? Una nga, information na must have. Tungkol sa mga ano-ano nga ba yung nangyari sa sports na to na isusulat natin. Then the additional information that helps them understand but isn't essential. And huli, information that's interesting or nice to have. Ito na, example na tayo ng good sports writing. Example number 1. From Roger Federer as Religious Experience 2006 by David Foster Wallace. A top athlete's beauty is next to impossible to describe directly or to evoke. Federer's forehand is a great liquid whip. His backhand, a one-hander that he can drive flat, load with top spin or slice, and the slice with such snap that the ball turns shapes in the air and skates on the grass to maybe ankle height. His serve has world-class pace and a degree of placement and variety no one else comes close to. The service motion is lithe and uneccentric, distinctive. On TV, only in a certain eel-like all-body snap at the moment of impact. His anticipation and court sense are otherworldly, and his footwork is the best in the game. So yun yung sinasample ni David Foster Wallace sa kanyang sports writing. Ito naman, number 2. From Most Dominant Athlete of 2018, Simone Biles, written by Daniel Smith. The only thing that greater than the legendary genius paradigm-shifting athletic status of Simone Biles or Simone Biles is the degree to which so many don't know or can't understand what is that she actually does. Even if you've seen Biles doing a split lip on a box of Special K, you likely don't know the depth of her determination to dominate. Some of it is that Biles competes in an odd ancient Greek sport based in disciplined exercise that conquering the Romans militarized and people now barely pay attention to outside of Summer Olympic years. most of it is that it's the American female gymnasts who excel. Okay. May question tayo doon, anak. Is it clear? Is everything clear?
Yes po.
Yes
Yes
po.
po.
Okay. So now we're going to have our short quiz.